building kennels, throwing work in for a few shelves for the space, that type of thing. So this is the first kennel I built just by myself solely. Built this on my parents' farm and did that for a while, did the craft fair stuff, and decided that the person I was living with at the time, in the past, like, we don't want to stay here, this is a nice little town, but like, we got more stuff to do, right? So, she went back to get her doctorate at IU, and I was lucky enough to be a special student there for a year or a little more. And there, I kind of started bringing back those painting things back into the forms, right? So this is low-fire soda, I think, and it's like soda that's sprinkled down there. And then, well, I didn't like that too much, so then I started like thinking, how I was gonna address the figure, right? And this was 2011. This is like peak Facebook selfie happening, right? So this is a selfie that's super pixelated, and then put it onto this form. These lines are, if anybody's used the construction stuff before, like when you pop a line with a chalk, yes, and there. So you can buy those empty. So I made a mixture of mason stains and CNC gum and what else? A few other things that I put in there. So you could pop it and then fire it and it would stay like a powdery like that. I could never figure out the third hand to do that. I tried with my mouth, whatever. And I started by asking people to come over to do that, so I gave that also. So went to grad school, tried not to make anything I did before. Up to this point, I was really, I was low firing. I was wood firing at like 04 to 1, right? I was trying to do like miners, whatever that type of wood firing. And I got to grad school and I kind of needed to decide, am I going to be a process person or am I going to be a piece person? Right? I think they're both very, very good and they're both very, very fruitful. But at this point, I tried to be a process person where I'm working in a wood kiln, I'm working with these things, you throw this stuff in, you get something out, right? As opposed to a piece person where like I am going after a particular idea, right? I hope that makes sense. I'm not making sense, you can just do that. This is some work I made, like in grad school, I'm just fishing around, throws up the wall, trying to do things. This was my summer in China, and these were made in these big plaster molds. I'd like to talk more about China tomorrow. It was a really fascinating place to work in. And but this was kind of exercising memory because you're painting inside a mold. You forget what, you can't remember what layer came before, so all this is like going off memory to build that out. You're hanging up glass, right? So I wasn't too like, whatever, I like this, okay. We do this. We're just cotton balls and super slip on making these big structures, right? I'm probably crying 80 pounds of dry material in a 10-gallon bucket. It's just like darting, until you couldn't pack any more paper and clay. So build these things, and I'm thinking like, what is a figure? What's a figure piece? Is a hand figure piece? Is a thumbnail figure piece? What about the bacteria that live under the thumbnail, right? These things inside. Is that still considered a figure sculpture? Right? So doing all this stuff and kind of bouncing around, but ultimately was not satisfying, right? And actually, there's some IU people here. Tim Adler told me one time, probably told that to me, people like, not all personal work is good, but all good work is personal, right? And this stuff prior to this was very personal, but academic. It wasn't like anything real there, right? So going into my thesis year, or I guess it's a little before halfway, we had this old skill that we used in the clay making room. I just weigh stuff out of the mat. And I got a fancy new digital one. It's like, hey, can I have that? And they let me have this like huge 300-pound scale or whatever. So I'll work with this. This is an important piece because when I first started using found objects as an important part of the work. And for me, skills pop up quite a bit. This was important for me because it was a new way into the work. You go to the gallery, you can look at the work, you can touch the work if you're not taught, right? You can smell the work, right? I suppose you can taste the work if you're really brave, right? But there's no way to get inside of the work, right? So having a scale that is like accurate was a new way to be honest with the viewer and within the work, right? So this thing, I think, weighs like 76 pounds. And you know that, you can see it down the ground, weighs 76 pounds. I'm not trying to mislead anybody about what this, it's not a full clay figure with clothes in it, right? So for me, this is the gateway into having found objects that are not accoutrements. They're actually important, integral things to the work, right? It is like weird to see this work now, like, oh, dang, it's terrible. Like there's so many things that I can't believe I'm not ever okay. But these are here that they fall, there's a knife and a needle, and kind of this idea of like anything that you gain, you're going to pay in some way, right? Like there's like a cyclical thing to this process. And then I talked a little earlier today about just embracing being a doll maker. This is where everything kind of came together, right? Like all these things that was clawing and scratching, kind of meeting, and then all of a sudden, the introduction of thoughtfulness kind of opened everything up. Everything made sense all of a sudden. I'm going to repeat myself a little bit because I said this earlier, but the sewing and the cloth, right, was representative of like my mother's influence in a traditionally feminine aspect of stuff, right? And the wood and the metal, and what stuff that is more structural is more representative of the masculine influences, right, in my life. And then clay was like me within the trifecta, something you could be both hard and soft, both decorative and structural, right, depending on how you use it. So it allowed me to get to a point where every choice in the material was meaningful, right? There's no fat on this, I will not do it. And it opened up how I thought about stuff, how I made it, right? Conceptually, but also structurally, right? Before, when I did a sculpture like this, whatever, a little over dramatic, like this, right? You have to start down, make clay, all the way up, you measure this thing. Turn over, crack, fire, whatever. And you are locked into this shape forever once it goes through the course of working, right? Now, since I'm working as with a doll maker, I've got these hands, I can change that sculpture all the way to the last minute, right? I take notes, so if I don't like a hand, I can bring back a hand later, they need to do something else. And it really kept this process alive until the very end. Something that I personally, as an ADD hacker or whatever, you get like just bored with what you're doing, or you're ready to do something else. It helped me kind of stop that, really. Like I was more involved and I was invested to the very end. Right. I try not to be overbearing with the messages in here, but there's like Christianity was a very important thing growing up to me, like as it like in like how it shaped the culture that I was in, how that in turn shapes the lenses in which I look through. These things, I'm probably not going to talk about what each and every one means, right? Because that'd be very long, and it's not, I don't want to be talking at people. I want things to be a dialogue back and forth. There's another, another benefit of confound objects. Everybody has some kind of connotation with the boat motor, right? Some kind of history with that. And I don't want to lock that in. I want somebody to bring their own experiences to this, to interpret this work, right? This was made during a crisis of refugees trying to get into Spain at the time in Europe. There's like a catastrophe every week now. You kind of lose track of them. But at the time, it was kind of dominated the news cycle and just didn't, like, I think the hypocrisy of, like, any carbon-based life form, right, needs to reproduce and needs to expand, right? Like, it's just built into everything, really. And the, like, I don't know, I think borders are very antiquated in a lot of ways. It goes against, like, how we're, built, really, to do. So moving into Airmont work, I was lucky enough to be accepted as a long-term resident at Airmont after my thesis work. And they had a bunch of old plaster busts at the top, and Marshall let me have a couple of them on my way to Airmont. So I got there and decapitated them and made my own heads for that. And there was some fancy cardinal who was supposed to be, I think he was supposed to be more like Thomas Jefferson for the other one, I'm not sure. So So, but I was thinking a lot about the separation of church and state, and how like strange bedfellows and they're always fighting with each other, or whatever. And has anybody ever seen, know what Punch and Judy is? What a Punch and Judy show is, right? So this Punch and Judy is an incredibly violent puppet show that they show to kids. It's like, I don't know, like 1650 or something. It's a very long time. And I wanted to, I don't know, think about that, right? Hopefully each work is going to be answering stuff for me as well, right? A little earlier, if I just have an idea and I make that idea on an Illustrator, right? I want work that I don't fully understand until 6 months later, right? For me, that's a litmus test of is this good work? Have I figured something out for the next one? If not, it's just practice, right? And those one work probably. I am at the point of almost selling these for $50 just to get them out of my storage. There is, influenced a lot of stuff, but probably none more than the book Ridley Walker. It's a fantastic book. It's, if you've ever read Clockwork Orange, it's kind of made up language. You have to read the book a few times to kind of get the case of what they're saying. It's like that also. And Father wrote actually 2 talking dogs in that book. But it was a heavy influence to me, and I wanted to try something new with like attached heads. Right? And when I'm time for this, I usually have a show for a house that is made also. So within this stove, there are little rods that I took the stove apart, attach those, and the rods go up into the bodies, and I build wood off of that, and then spray from so forth. This is another piece that I made at Airmont. This was stuff in the farm. Like we raised hogs and soybeans and stuff, and hadn't for a long time, but I found this stuff out of a particular hog barn that had collapsed and I wrestled through. And I was making heads as I want to do, just like with no purpose, really. And all of a sudden, like, oh man, that's like Dad, like, bald or whatever. He doesn't know that. I never told him that. But like, because he's not like that ugly or anything, but it's kind of how Dad feels it. So I started making that and changing direction to like kind of about like the cyclical. He sacrificed a lot to get us out of that life, right? Like you were steel mills, steroids, or whatever. So I wanted to make something about like cyclical, like I wouldn't say poverty. I didn't grow up in poverty, but it wasn't like it was poor, I guess. And then in Gatlinburg, you may not been in Gatlinburg. It's a nutty place, right? Like the juxtaposition of like it's just so cacophonous, right? There's like deep fried candy packs. That's usually how it's described. It's true. And you're in Airmont, it's like a world away, right? Like it's a 10-minute walk from one world to the other. It's very serene, peaceful, and the residence hall is very nice there. I was just thinking, like progress at what cost? Like is this progress? And I was kind of thinking about like being pushed into progress without your permission, right? For doing an experiment without permission, for doing an experiment without permission, that type of stuff. So I started thinking about Albert is the first primate, I think, that survived space flight. I say space flight with quotation marks, so he just barely got out of the stratosphere or whatever, and also died 30 minutes later. So, but that's it, they say it's right. And again, I wanted to make this scale accurate, so it reads exactly what this is. This was also made after the Gatlinburg fire. So a lot of this stuff I found in our Airmont's maintenance shed that had burned down. They let me rummage through it before bulldozers came there to take everything away. And these were brand new fire extinguishers. I got a lot to say about this, but I don't want to. So part of the thing for most residencies, right, is you leave a piece for the permanent collection. That's kind of something you sign on to. And it bothered me in the past to see people just leave stuff in itself, right? I wanted to make something that was very purposeful for Airmont. And I looked at Bill's work. It feels like he's the reason that the residence department So I wanted to look at his work and make something for Airline, right? And you probably remember prior, right, his work, like some of the buildings, right? So when he said for me, pictures and all that stuff, he said for me, I stained oak strips to kind of bend that in the shape of some of the sculptures. And then to the best of my ability, with no paint color, I colored that roughly the same color as the residence building there, right? So, how's the bill built? It's super important to me. Airline is the first, like, big institution that gave me a chance, you know? Okay, so we're into the break now. I was lucky again that I got to this one from residence straight out of Airline. And every time I move locations, it's like, it's hard to find my feet, right? Like make it work, it really throws me out of whack. So I probably spent half a year there just making garbage, right? Trying to find, used to do PAL, used to do studio, trying to like find my way. And then I usually have the walls of antiques on one side of the studio. And I'm just listening to stuff, I'm reading stuff, thinking about stuff. And those things, sometimes they come together, and sometimes, a lot of times they don't, right? So this time I was thinking, I had this buckboard seat, it was Amish, and I was like, oh, I need to make something like therapy or some kind of allusions to that, kind of a couch and all these things. And I just knew I wanted to make a figure with sculpture with two figures on it, right? I don't know before. So I was doing this, and I was listening to a sculpture podcast. Excuse me. And I was reading, and I was reading about Michelangelo's, there were two contemporary biographies of Michelangelo while he was alive, right? One is very widely believed to be just him dictating to some group where to write this down. I think a lot of artists, like, the best they ever make is their own legend, right? The ones that we listen to, they spend just as much time kind of sculpt what people think about them as they do the work themselves, right? So I was thinking about that, and then I was also thinking about the Milgram experiment. You might be familiar with the Milgram experiment. Okay. So during the Nuremberg trials, right? It was heavy for a little bit. During the Nuremberg trials, when they were held these SS officers, right? The thing that I heard mostly was, I was just following orders. I don't want to do this. I'm just an army person. I didn't care for this. I'm just following orders, right? And that's a hard thing to swallow when you start seeing pictures of Doc Al coming out, right? The public was not having that. So the scientists at Milgram designed this experiment, right? So it would be two people would come in, right? There's one test subject. And two people come in, and they agree to be part of this science experiment. One would go on the other side of the wall. One would be there administering questions, right? The person administering questions was the real test subject. The person on the other side of the wall was an actor that was part of this study, right? And they say, okay, we're doing these tests for capital S science or whatever. And you're going to ask some questions, and every time they get the answer wrong, you're going to shock them. And each time you shock them, that's going to go up in voltage. And I think duration as well, right? So they would ask questions. The person on the other side of the wall would purposely answer these wrong, right? They were actors. And they would shock them. And then through the course of this, it would increase in intensity, and they would pretend to throw up and beg and plead, please don't do this anymore, please don't do this anymore. Pretend to die sometimes, right? And it shocked the scientific community that people were doing it, right? They would keep doing it. So these red-blooded 50s, 60s Americans, right? You know that guy must have his son on board, right? That type of person would shock somebody just like him because of the power of a white lab coat and a clipboard. That's it. All it was. They got them at any moment. They did because of the institution of science and the institution of power, right? So that's what this test was actually measuring. How far people go for something that's not real. They have an understanding of it being an institution. So if that could happen, right, it's so blatant. What am I doing subconsciously, right? What are we all doing subconsciously that you think you have control over? You don't, right? These institutions, the brand that are huge, all these things that are in the background all the time are affecting us in ways that we cannot comprehend, right? It's very, very powerful, especially when you get to something as large as a religion or a political party or a country or a state or a school, right? Or some other school, right? How is that stuff pushing you to do things that you don't understand, right? So I put those together. In the Michelangelo autobiography, he talks about this famous part of the painting, not as God giving Adam life, but as giving Adam the holy dictates. Do this, don't do this, do this, don't do this, right? Telling him how to act, right? So I wanted to put those together in a piece, kind of thinking about the overlap, the Venn diagram of those two things, really. And then immediately after that, I want to get back to some light work. And then the Las Vegas shooting happened, right? Just as soon as I finished that. So with the Milgram piece, I really struggled with that for a long time to put it together. And then, so sometimes it takes a long time, sometimes it happens overnight, right? So this piece was done in a week, right? Shit, my mess. Okay. Yeah, this, and then this, I guess I'm just going to say, I'm just going to go through work, and then you take pictures if you got questions tomorrow. I'm going to talk about this stuff more in detail then. I have no idea. I've gone on that long. This is a terrible piece, but I put it in here because I taught my son how to loom, and he taught my mom how to loom, and it's like a nice cyclical thing, but because she taught me how to sew. This was a piece of the Bray show that has a mirror in the back of it. So part of this was about, if you can see that, part of this is about just the peacocking that happens there, right? Like you get in there, you know, it's like, you guys know what, they've got a show or whatever, like chest bumping around. So I wanted to make this, and you can put the illusions there together with Rooster and Pump. It's a pretty small jump to what that's supposed to be. And then in the back, I put a mirror where if you are eye level, you can see your own height in the mirror, the small one, right? So part of that was like you need to get some eye level to see the work truly. And part of that was to see, like, me and a friend got a couple of beers and sit back in the corner of the gallery. Part of it was to see how many people will keep fix their hair, like while they're looking at it. Like the eyes will jump up to make sure you're okay before you go back after the gallery opening or whatever. So it's part science experiment. I have started using chimps occasionally. I said I never did animals, but then Russell taught me the day in the show, and I kind of had fun doing chimps. And chimps are like, in a way, like humans without the veneer in a lot of ways. This piece, I mean, this is my perfect piece, right? I wanted something that's going to take a year, right? So it doesn't mean I did one thing per month, but overall it was a year. And I think we've all kind of feel like Sisyphus sometimes. And for me, like to kind of tie this into perception, like the most successful piece of propaganda to ever happen is our rating system, right? Doesn't matter what you believe, you're tacitly agreeing that it has been 2,025 years since Christ existed, right? So it's thinking about stuff like that is like so ingrained that you don't think about it really. Like you are agreeing to that, no matter if you're Hindu, Muslim, whatever, you're agreeing to that actually happening because it's based on our dating system. So I got more to talk about that, I'll do that tomorrow. So this is the last bachelor. This is 12 feet tall, pretty good dude. And it's important for a couple reasons. Mainly because my future wife will be married in 2 weeks. She did half of this, probably over half of this, right? So this is all straw that's been woven together. Okay. So here's scale doing that. And I wanted to make this huge piece that is like hard to get away from, right? The name of this piece is No True Scotsman. And originally, I didn't have the balls to do this, but I wanted to like do this Joaquin Phoenix performance thing where I started forcing people to call me shameless and wearing kilts around and like I'm getting back to my roots and but I didn't because I'm a terrible performer. So, but this is like No True Scotsman is a fallacy, it's a logical fallacy, right? Where the example is no true Scotsman would ever eat in this bar, right? And it asks if I'm a true Scotsman, then the person can say, well, that makes you not a very true one if you eat in this bar, right? It's a kind of a twisty head thing that happens like almost every day in the news now, right? I'm not doing it justice explaining that logical fallacy, but that's where the name came from, and I wanted to make this thing like hard to get away from, really. It's so enormous, it's hard to wrap your head around the whole thing. You know, just the hypocrisy of a lot of stuff. And my son helped also. Nice. Well, this was all hands on deck. And I started building this thing. The piece was 12 feet. I started building it in a room that was 11 and a half feet tall. When I got to the top, so I had to take it apart, build it in sections, put it together later. And I think this is the piece that's here. So I think I can about it time. Thank you.
So a couple of things that I'm going to be demoing today. I've got plates that I'm carving, which I'm sure everybody would like to see that. So I'll be working on that for the majority of the time, but I'm going to start on the wheel, do a couple cups, get warmed up, and bounce between carving and the sculpture over here. So I'm going to jump on the wheel and let you take it away.
And I'm going to make a head. Go about doing this that's not really hollow building, but it's not really solid either. So, and the reason I like to do this is you can get a form up, get a head up really, really quick, right? And make some decisions and leave as much time as possible at the end for detail work, right? It doesn't do a lot of good to spend 4 hours making a form, like just to put a head up for me. I'm going to preface everything that I say is going to call for me at the end. For me, everything is very subjective. So if I forget to say it at some point and I say something that is you don't agree with, that's for me. So I'm going to roll this out. And you can see already we have a pot basically, right? That was like 15 seconds. I will use a paddle to kind of shape this into a football shape. Has anybody ever played drums before? Right. They tell you when you hit the snare that you want to pull the note out, right? You don't want to slap it and see it there, pull it out. So I'm going to paddle this, and the way that I'm doing this is kind of similar to very slow throwing, right? So as I hit this, I'm kind of making this movement up. You can see the clay is naturally sticky, right? So it's going to want to grab that and follow that direction. So you can see this is basically the same thing as throwing, right? Just without it. Other side. I do not want this too thin, right? Because I don't want to fight soft clay. I don't want to fight like forms collapsing in on me. Through the course of finishing this head, I will probably cut it apart and hollow it out 2 to 3 times maybe. So I'm not worried about it being super thick right now. What I want is a layer of clay that's going to be responsive to the decisions I make without me wasting time trying to fight this thing. For me, or that's for me, right? I know a lot of people really find the personality or the character of the person they're making right through that slab making or through the coil making. It's whatever gets you there, right? Toward the end. When I was in grad school, I had to think a lot about time, speed, right? Speed in the studio. I can't work very fast, right? And that's not always good, right? So I trying to think about the studio like an EQ system. I've got all these things I can do, right? And I can turn this up, turn this low, whatever. So I try to experiment working really, really fast, and I try working really, really slow and forcing myself to stay with something for months on end, whatever. I kind of ended up in a spot where it's super fast in the beginning, and I try to slow it down as the process goes forward. I'm sorry, I don't want to talk too much.
I'm just super slow carving. It takes like, 5-6 hours just to do one thing. So I can feel it.
So we got a pot. All right.
Okay, can you still hear me? Cool. I'm gonna jump on the wheel here, and I like to give myself a warm-up cup. We don't just jump right into playing a basketball game, because we're in Indiana. If you're playing a basketball game, you don't just jump in and start playing basketball. You gotta warm up. So I'm gonna give myself a little warm-up cup, and I just do a basic cylinder to start off everything. I'm gonna draw a little cylinder, and then let's see. I think I'm also gonna. Does anybody care to see any pipes made on the wheel? I think there's some pipes. If anybody has seen the show yet, I have a piece in the show that I've deemed the Rap Queen, and so she's got some pipes coming out of her, and I think I'm gonna demo some of the places too. So I'll jump on.
I'm gonna take a couple of
I don't typically throw on that, and I don't really know why, but it gives me a lot of joy whenever I can just, if I'm in an intro class and I pick up a pot off the wheel with my bare hands, and all the students are like, what is happening? Why are we doing this? So that I'm kind of do that today too. I don't think anybody out here is going to be that surprised with that.
Okay, so maybe this is what we're talking about. I work in a lot of things like this, right? It's got a piece of wood, it's got feet on it, right? And got a lot of these that don't have package to them. The hole is going to be a hole, right? So when I'm building this head, right, I can get this up in the air and see it for what it is, right? It's really hard to control something when you're fighting against the table, right? You can't visually get under there to see what's going on. So I like to do this, right? And then I'll make the head separate and transfer that to a neck later on, right? And then I make it go however I like, right? I'm not trying to make this in its entirety right out of the gate. So after that's done, right, after I pull it out, I'll take this off, and then I can have the piece drying on this, right, with a hole in it. So I saw John Ballesteri work one time, and you guys know his work, it's like this big, it's a massive, huge stuff, right? And he talks about creating its own natural draft through the work, right? So it would dry on the inside evenly with the outside. So this doesn't work as good, right? Because it's smaller, but it still helps to have this hole with this air to flow through here. And as long as I keep my top open, right, it'll kind of pull moisture out of there a little more than it would be this on a flat bed. Right now what I'm doing is getting this, I'm putting this in dummy clay here. Now I've got this up in the air. I don't care about anything right here. I'm just focused on this. I'll do this later. Right.
There's this towel in bread. I'm trying to do this part. Okay, this cup that I'm about to start throwing, so I'm kind of getting back into sculpture, and I was a sculpture major, believe it or not, here at Ball State. And I knew that I would love clay, but I just didn't know anything else. And you'll hear that my artist talk here in a little bit. So I started in ceramics for about 2 weeks, and then I moved into sculpture. I quickly realized I didn't know anything. And so, what is it now? Almost 10 years later since I started here, I'm finally getting back, and it's very exciting. And so, the piece that is in the show right now, actually, made, so the piece that I made in the show right now, the Rat Queen, was one of my first sculptures back into this little sculpture world. So this is my second one, and this would have been incredibly difficult to make while I was here because of the setup and drag time, you know. So I made this beforehand, and then I think I'm going to finish it off either later today or tomorrow. So this cup is what I'm going to try and replicate for this bad boy, and I think that's what I'm going to try and do now. So replicating this piece here is what I'm going to do. You're already halfway done at this.
Fast. Okay. So. I don't ever aspire to make like a perfectly realistic figures. Right? If you wanted that, you could take molds of people's faces. There's a lot of really good ways to make perfectly accurate figures. Right? So it's never really my goal, but I do want them to be in the realm of being realistic, right? So I do think about proportions a little bit. I didn't have, can you see this? Okay. So I didn't have access to a clay studio this summer, renovations. So I tried to learn how to carve wood. So I made these out of wood because I'm teaching a anatomical class this summer. So it was fun to learn something new. But I thought it's a handy little like teaching tool, right? So when you look at the skull, right? You divide down the center, and then you've got two lines. You do that into a third, right? It's a really easy way to get your proportions up in a matter of like 3 minutes, right? So you're not fighting the geography of a face all the time, right? So we'll talk. I'll try not to talk about muscles or whatever. But I do like carving, but I found a lot of carving. So what I'm going to do, really quickly, you see this, okay?
Yep.
Okay. Down the middle, right? Down the middle. I'm going to decide where my chin's going to be, right? So I'm going to take a wedge off this, move to the front. This is a little soft. Probably, this is the first time I've gotten to make anything since November, I think, maybe. So, just as much fun for me. So now I've got this really rough thing, right? And then a third, right? Eyes in, back out, nose, mouth.
Does anybody else love the SpongeBob stick? Is that just my SpongeBob stick? I forgot it. I could do something.
My sponge recently fell off and I used it.
Inside of the car?
Yeah.
That's funny. Oh, that's funny. Yeah. I recently have been throwing pieces where it is like the least functional to clean. So if you see any of those on the back table and you try and fake a hole in it, you can't. And that is apparently on purpose because I just like the way that looks, and you just gotta get a little scrubby thing to scrub this out. And same with this one, and same with that. It's just the proportions for some reason, I just gotta make it as tiny as possible. And then
Luckily it shrinks. Get your part right there.
yes, lovely, it gets smaller. And like I said, this is my warm-up, so if this collapses, we always collapse. Anybody else hold their breath while they throw? Alright. How long does it typically make take to make just like the outline of the head?
Like that.
Like if you were just in your studio and you were like maybe start to finish in a day, how far would you get in a day?
I don't really work like,
That was a rough
I was a
question.
potter for many, many years, right? And I think that DNA is still up there of how I think about playing.
Right.
So at least the school of thought that I was in was it takes, you can't just make a good pot. You gotta make 100 pots to make an okay pot. You gotta make 1,000 pots to make a great pot, right? Because those factors come together in different ways, and it's kind of out when it's more than some of its parts. 2 + 2 = 5. You don't have control over that, I think. So when I set out to make work, I will start 6 of these, right, pretty fast, and then
So it's production.
it's production almost, right? And then maybe work for 2 days, 3 days, and then I'll whittle down. Okay, I'll take the 2 weakest out, and then I'll take the 3rd weakest out or whatever, and kind of work like a March Madness bracket, I guess, like working toward the one at the end that has something in it. So it's hard to say how much this takes because like an actual finished sculpture takes
Yeah.
way longer than just making the stuff because I have to be really honest sometimes. Sometimes you make work, finish it, you go through all the stuff, you get it done, it's in the studio, and you like it's that you think in your head like, "Ah, this is not good.
Yeah.
It's not good. I spent 3 months on this, it's not good.
Just
It's-
trash it, just get rid of it.
I'll take it apart or use it for test or whatever, but it's so easy to like lie to yourself. Like, that's pretty fine to do
it's
that or
fine.
whatever. I can see that. It's just a slippery slope. So I try to treat these like pots and with as much like connection to those as a pot. Like I'm sure you guys know, like don't get attached to anything until it's out of the kiln for the second time. Even then, you disappear really quickly. So I try not to be too attached to these things until they're done. But you can see that's pretty quick face, right? And because this clay is, inch thick, inch and a half thick, or whatever, I can push and pull and whatever, and I don't have to worry about this thing falling apart.
What type of clay are you each using?
I'm using the Coda porcelain from Kentucky Leadworks. There's another one that I started using, it's also called the Polar Ice. That one's at the braid, and that one is a tricky little beast to throw, but it is just like the whitest porcelain. It's so good. But Coda porcelain is my favorite.
I use a clay bite that I mix up. When I went to grad school, like when you're starting out, right? Like you're looking at all these magazines and all these books, and like, what's my thing? I gotta have my thing. Like you can look at Nick Driller and pot, like that is unmistakably a Nick Driller and pot, right? Or and you're like, how do I find that? How do I find that thing that is mine, whatever? And I think at least for me, right? There was a lot of false starts trying to find the thing, and I think when you have the mentality, you're looking for style, right? So as opposed to substance, right? You're thinking about the surface first before you think about how you got to that surface, right? So I guess it's a long way to say that I spent half of my grad career trying to find this awesome clay body that was going to be my clay body. And it was going to be a black clay body at cone 10 or 11. And I just had this image in my head, like that's what I want. And I tried. I finally forget this, like I can't, whatever. I'm just going to use the class clay body. So this is like a cheap clay body that we use for clay women. It's already mixed up. The reclaim's already there. It's just easy. And then my work started getting a lot better once I wasn't fighting a front 6 different ways, right? Like plays there. I don't have to think about this anymore. Then I can start thinking about what I've got and just take that choice off the table, right? And it ended up being like one of the best things I've ever done is to just pick something that is easy to use, fire is easy. It used to be cheap before they stopped mining talc. I don't know, they bring back talc. I missed that. Talc still up there.
For some reason, whenever I started making these taller forms, I can never get away with not giving it a little bit more than that's the last thing I typically do before I cut it off the field. And then that's it. Got my warm-up in. Now, for the magical power for anybody that's never seen it, lift it off the wheel. Okay, I'm gonna throw these in there, but I really don't think we will. Oh, last one. So the next one I'm gonna throw are the shapes back there on that table that are like more bulbous. And I will do some of the feet attachments, whatever that says, so probably some art, and also some little paste. So I just clay. Does anybody weigh their clay before they throw? You should. I do not. But I should. I'm like, this is a little empty. Let's just take that out. And I am not a production power, but it might seem that way, but I am not. So I just kind of give it a guess. Feels good? Great.
I did the same thing when I was visiting artists at other schools. Like, you should be slipping and pouring. I'm not going to do this. But you should always slip and pour.
Although I will say, I did at one point have to measure the clay to find out what a pound felt like. So I did do it at one point, but it's not that fun to do all. This is a way.
So this is my most used tool, probably, with a cheap soft brush.
You're throwing things already?
Yeah, 50% of my practice is like,
Throwing stuff?
no, just like looking for the thing.
If you have questions, yes, please come up to the mic. I couldn't tell you how to turn it up, but we can yell.
Yeah, just flip the mic on and then you're done.
This is not really what you're doing question, but I noticed you guys have tattoos. As artists as well as potters, do you guys have a tattoo that's special to you, in connection to your style, and also have you traded pottery for tattoos?
If I could find somebody that would, I'd be all about trading.
I did so many trades. I'm not gonna lie. I have a friend in Brooklyn, Mary Glenn. She's done some for me and my partner, and that's a really good question. It's also in my artist presentation, and I'm going to talk. I'll show some pictures that correlate with that too. But especially within my work itself, like line work is really important to me, and it inspires a lot of the stuff that I do. And so yeah, the tattoo and the sgraffito like kind of came at the same time for me. And I've got a bigger piece on my on my shoulder here, and it goes all the way to my back. And that was my first one. It took like 10 hours to do that. Like, if I'm gonna do it, just do it. And my dad was not a fan, and I said, fine, I'll do a bigger one than I thought I was gonna do. Anyways, very angsty, almost teen. I was like Yeah, still two. And so that one actually, funny enough, symbolized my family. And so my family are a bunch of gardeners. And so I had my brother, my parents, whoever else in my family was close to me at the time. I had them pick what their favorite thing was to grow. And so I have this bouquet of florals on my arm and shoulder. So that was my first one that I really enjoyed. And that got me pretty heavily inspired to do some more line work. And so everywhere that I travel, all the hand and touch it the place I travel to. So I have quite a few at this point. This little lamp one on my leg is my first Insika kitchen tattoo from Lynn and Ricky. I forget what Insika that was. Was that Cincinnati? Yeah, that one was really but I paid for that one because us broke potter people, it's like we gotta support, not trade on. I'll let you jump in. You got any good stories with your tattoos?
Aramont tattoo.
Oh.
I actually got that when you were kicked out of Aramont for the fire. You guys remember that? The Smokies caught on fire. So I was a resident here that year, and I got that. I didn't. There's all these like rumors swirling around everywhere, like, oh my God, Aramont burned down, the aquarium burned down, or whatever. Turns out, didn't. Well, like part of Aramont got burned down, the shed or whatever. But so I got that when we were uncertain, like if we were going to have a place to go back to, and like what was the deal with that. So, but it's like Aramont's old logo, a little. Actually, it was on your shirt. One of those images. It said clay and it had the Aramont like arrow. It has a dot in it. That's the older logo. I don't know, doing I got a Bill Watterson tattoo.
Talk about the Don.
Oh, that's a clay tattoo, I guess. Yeah, like who was that? Sir Andrew. I'm having trouble remembering their names last year. Like an old clay person who's English. Anthony Carter. I think he's not. But this old video of him talking about donkey work, like that 90% of clay is donkey work. It's not like growing and being creative or whatever. It's digging the dirt. It's mixing the slip. It's mixing the glazes or whatever. It's on your back trying to get to an element connection or whatever. It's all these like unglamorous things that come to play that he talked about being the most spiritual. So I guess that tattoo in a way is about like just embracing the donkey work of everything. Like Tom Waits, you know, Get Behind the Mule. That's heard that song. So yeah, I guess so. That's one.
I've got two frogs that don't mean a thing, and I love those, and that's all about those. I got those in Portland, Oregon, and the tattoo artist's name is Happy Fish Head, and they have all these surreal mashups of like, I've got a couple of my arm here of some watermelon beetles that don't exist, and they've got little boots and a cowboy hat, and that was right whenever I was starting to make the classic cowboy frogs in my work, and I thought, this is awfully appropriate, and it would be horrible if I didn't get these. So there are some that just speak to me and say, I gotta live on you, and that's how we do it. I have, let's see, my other ones. Oh, the next one that I want to get is, so I am absolutely terrified of flying. I don't know why. I do it often, and it's just not my favorite thing. I love driving. And so my partner hates bears, and he just moved back from Montana. And that's a fair fear in Montana. Like, we don't want to mess with a grizzly bear. So we have thought about getting matching, well, not matching tattoos, but I'll ask you this. If you picture a bear plane, what does that look like? What is that? Like, what do you immediately picture? Do you picture a bear
totally clay stuff. If you're when I teach workshops and classes and stuff for the figure, the thing that I see most often inhibiting making convincing figure to work is everything being flat, right? Like the eyes are like headlights on a car, right? Just even forward, right? The mouth's on the same line as the eyes, whatever. Because I think most people, you start off, if you're artistically inclined, right? You start off with a pencil, right, as a kid, or a paintbrush or something. And then you have that neuroplasticity in your head, right? Like you think of creating with an instrument to make marks, right? At least for me, right? I'm generalizing here, but it's hard to break that habit. You're operating on a flat plane, right? You're trying to put a flat plane on a 3D object. And people can't quite like see what is happening there. So my suggestion is if you're interested in doing work, try to make this as pushback as you possibly can, right? If you guys seen Beetlejuice, like they pull their face way out or whatever, try to make that as elongated and bird-like as possible, right? It's way easier to shorten this up and truncate these things than it is to keep adding stuff out, right? And use clay for what it's good for, right? It's not, if you're gonna work on this, don't treat it like marble, right? Don't treat it like this precious material. It's clay, it's dirt. Cut it out, take it off, throw it away, whatever, right? The trade-off of dealing with all the pain in the ass of like firing this thing and drying it slow and glazing and all those things, like the trade-off is you can be fast and loose and free with your marks and confident with your marks. And I have to kind of break students' tendency to work up to perfection, right? To kind of eke up to that and not just blow past it back and forth until you find that thing you're looking for, right? I will often talk about, for me, this is more about being an archaeologist than it is about being a creator. Like you've seen those videos where they have a brush and they're like barely taking off the dirt to find the collarbone of something, right? I'm making these marks, and the farther I get into this process, the less dramatic they are. But I'm looking for something to emerge out of this like slab of mud, right? So when I'm putting marks in, right, I'm not looking at somebody's like clavicle and trying to make the perfect curve, right? I am being pretty loose and random with this stuff, right? And that gives me the opportunity to discover something that I couldn't think about, right? You are limited by your imagination, right? You're limited by what you can envision in your head, right? So take that, like what you can imagine, right? And then you've got your skill, right? Where that is, your skill set, right? And rarely ever did your skill set come up to what you can imagine, right? So you're always kind of stuck in this limbo of like not being able to nail what you know you can do, right? So if you kind of circumvent that and let chance take a swing at it, right? You can start to make things that you couldn't imagine, right? That's awesome, I don't like this. I don't like this, get rid of this, whatever. So I'm trying to treat this like brushing dust off the dinosaur logo. And I'll put marks in, I'll hit it with my brush, it'll calm those down. If I like it, the next round I'll do it again, right? And picking that, if I don't like it, I'll brush it away, right? So a mark that I like will be made 30 times probably in this thing because I'm pushing that back into the form, right? I'm solidifying that thing in my mind, what it is. Does that make sense? I'm not just rambling. All right. So it's, you don't have to be a genius, right? You don't have to be a master with your hands to make good work, right? In fact, I think people who have unlimited talent with how they make, it can turn into a jail really fast, right? It's like you were defined by what you can't accomplish, And then you have to invent ways to get where you know you can go. Like you have to go around the limits of your skill to get that. And that is where like real style comes from, real personality. Right? I couldn't make a perfectly realistic face, right? So I am hitting all around that and I'm inventing my own ways to get there. And then those processes will lead to something that is not just your imagination. Like you're not just an illustrator of your own work, right? Because if you can imagine that, you can imagine something, you make it. Are you an artist or are you illustrating what's in your head, right? So to me, for me, right, art is like something that is beyond what you can imagine, right? Something that is 2 + 2 = 5, something that pushes back, right, on your will, right? That's for me. So I think play is a perfect medium for that, right? It is not subservient. It has its own will, it has its own personality, it will push back on you, right? So having a dialogue with that as opposed to commanding it, I think, is something I'm looking for in the book. Like I've got a graduate student right now that is really into beekeeping, and she is working on trying to like work with the bees to make it work. I think is really interesting. So finding something outside of yourself to work with, right, and not just, it's like having a conversation. We've all been stuck in a party where somebody just talks at you the whole time, right? Talks about themselves, talks at you, right? That is a one-way conversation. And hopefully, the work that I like at least is not just all on the surface telling you what to think, right? I love Mark Berger, right? But like, that's not the kind of work I'm trying to make where it's just like at you the whole time, right? But if you don't have enough of a seed of something in there, then it's hard to grasp onto, right? I think every piece or every body's work is slightly different about how where you are on that scale, that sliding scale. Sorry, I didn't mean to digress too far from tattoos. I started to talk about something else, eyes, and just.
This one I won't take off of the back because it gets all work. This one. One other question for all of you wheelchairers. Does anybody push the wire away from them or pull it towards you? I feel like 99% of people pull it towards you. Is there a reason why people do that? I don't know. But I for some reason, I push it away from me and that gives me more confidence. And each place that I've demoed at has been the one thing that I have not found a single person to agree with me. Nobody? That is not true. That's okay. That's all right. I'm gonna hang in there.
It makes sense. Because when we're going on this side of the pot, you can't see it, you'll slice it back on it, put it back done,
Right. So it's, somebody think about that. That's my question to you. I don't know.
Try it, do that.
Yeah, please try it. That would be great. The last thing that I'll demo here on the wheel is, oh my gosh, I think there is the pipes. So I'm going to make some cylinders, and my favorite tool right now for these is this little tiny credit card from the Hilton. Thank you, Hilton. You didn't sponsor this, but I still missed it. And I cut it up, and it's perfect because it doesn't break down. And so I'll cut it into little tiny pieces. And the way that I make these little pipes is I will throw a tube and then I'll push this into the center. And so I'll have this nice little, like, stacking Lego kind of look to it. And then I'll show you how I kind of cut those and shape them into new little twisty pipes. That's what fun facts about me, real quick, sorry.
I was going to ask you a question, so I'll wait.
Okay, well, real quick. So my first wheel was, it still had a wheel. It's very tiny. And in my first apartment in Indianapolis, once I graduated, I put that little wheel in the corner of my room. And that room was maybe 200 square feet. It could fit like a little twin bed and my wheel, and that was lost. And now every time I throw, I'm like, I got so much room.
goes into the studio?
Oh,
Are you like, do you like mix it up depending on what you're doing, like stages or whatever, or is it all consistent?
Well,
Or just dead silence?
oh no, never dead silence. Unfortunately, I cannot be alone with my own thoughts. That would be awful. But I do love pretty much anything. But I'm really into, I love podcasts. I love Libby. Anybody else a Libby fan out there? Nice. Get your books out there. I love a book on podcast or a book on tape. Is anybody a D&D fan? Anybody like Dimension 20? Let's go. Let's go. Okay, if you don't know what that is, Dungeons and Dragons, super nerdy, of course. But like all of my work is based on storytelling and creating these characters and creatures. And so during COVID, me and my brother and a couple of our friends just really got into D&D and started storytelling and started making all these crazy worlds. And my brother and me growing up, we grew up on a little small farm in southern Indiana called Hope, Indiana. Anybody from that world? No, it's about 2,000 people, it's very tiny. So we would like create all these stories and like, make these worlds in our backyard. And so going into D&D and creating these worlds was like, going back to when we were 5 years old. And so that truly is what I love listening to whenever I'm in the studio. But it's hard to get work done because I'm so invested in watching and I get distracted. So if I really need to focus, then I'll put on some kind of true crime podcast, classic, those true crime. So I'll listen to some of those, and then if I really need to get into the mood, I'll put on some heavy metal, really heavy metal. That's kind of like my weekly flow. I'll kind of go in between some of those. I love books too. I could get into some of those, but that would be an incredibly long conversation. What about you? What do you like to listen to?
Students' questions?
Huh?
Not really. That's just what I have.
I have a door that I can close, and I don't have to talk to anybody, which is great.
I have a symbolic. It is. I don't. Back when I made work 5 years ago, like I haven't had like it's not a lot of studio time since I got to Mac, but my work is probably 25% clay, maybe. But there's fabric work and there's woodwork and there's all this other stuff that goes into that. So it depends on what stage that is in, right? Like I find that I like different stuff when I'm sewing or weaving or something that I do when I'm,
I selfishly would like to know all the things about textile. Like, how did you start with textile? How did you start incorporating it? That's the next thing that I want to get into with things is like adding soft medium to a hard medium. So how did you start that?
Okay, so in grad school, like you're constantly searching for the thing. You guys know what a Zen koan is? Zen Buddhism koan?
Oh, yeah.
It's a question you ask to people that doesn't make any sense. The most famous one is what's the sound of one hand clapping, right? And it's not supposed to have an answer. It's just supposed to like break your brain until you see something in a different way, right? And for me, I think that's kind of what grad school was. It's just asking every conceivable question. You make one person happy, make somebody else unhappy. Make them happy, make somebody else unhappy, right? And it was about like needing to answer so many things that the questions became just like silly almost. Like I can't, like what do you mean, right? So when I broke, my breaking point was I was making all this clay to look like fabric. I had all these things that I kind of figured out with plastic and stuff so I could make it look just like fabric, like a couch or whatever. And my thesis chair, Tanya Hartman, who she was a Yale painting person, whatever, but she was awesome. And she's like, why don't you just use cloth, Richard? That'd be badass. And then, you know, like to make balls. I was like, no, I'll give it a go, whatever. So when I did finally try to do that, it just kind of clicked. Like, oh, that was the keystone of the place. Like, okay, I understand now how I can look at this work and approach this work and start thinking about that. Because, like, I grew up super rural. And, so my mother sewed her own wedding dresses and bridesmaids dresses. She got a sewing machine instead of a car when she was 16. Which she wasn't very happy about at the time, but she kind of made a lot of clothes. She made clothes for us or whatever. And my father grew up, like I'll say this in the artist talk, but I'm the first white male in that line to not have built their own house. Like tubers and but so you grew up in a construction zone where there's building and stuff, and I was trying to figure out, I was really interested in like perception of sound, really. And the only way to really, I think, for me, that's why I say for me all the time, because it's very subjective, right? Was to like think about why you interpret things the way you interpret them, right? And that is usually a combination of environment or past experiences that kind of color your understanding of what's happening. And I was really interested in that, right? And it's a really hard thing to make work about because by definition it's so subjective and nobody knows if you're looking at the same thing, right? So I started using those building material or those building methods and materials in the work, and that helped me to kind of like make sense about these different things that shape who I am, right? So I don't want to ruin the artist talk or whatever, but so I started using wood and fabric and clay. So I could address that the traditional masculine influences of my father, which are represented by the wood and the metalwork and all this stuff, and then the traditionally feminine stuff can be represented by the fabric and the sewing and the soft hair, the finished sweater. And then the clay would be me within this trifecta that is both hard and soft, right? It is both decorative and structural in the right scenario, right? So that kind of clicked in place for me, and I kind of got into that. I knew how to sew. I was call myself, I was going to say hippie dirtbag, but I guess I was a dirtbag, hippie dirtbag for a while, and like living on people's couches and falling down around and that whole shtick.
I mean, I lived out of a trailer for 3 years,
So there was a time when I refused to buy anything, and I was like trying to make my own clothes, and it just like being so I was an idiot, right? But trying to purposely look like a homeless person for a while. But during that stage, I got pretty familiar with sewing, and my mom had taught me how to sew also. So it was, like I said, it was a missing piece because I don't know if you guys feel this way, but you get bogged down in a certain aspect of the process. And I was a wood fired potter for many, many years before I quit kind of my academia. And it's just a long process of making the stuff and cutting the wood and stacking the thing and right? And that was a process that I enjoyed, but it was like, I didn't enjoy being involved anymore because it was like erasing what I liked in the work for me, you know. So I was stumbling around and trying to like figure out my studio practice, whatever. And when I started working in like clay for a while, and then wood structure for a while, and then really like the way that I colors, like painting for a while, and then you're sewing for a while, and you put it together. That's like a 6-week process. So I was like really eager to get back to that next section every time. So I was like, I can't wait to start sewing again. I can't wait to start doing clay.
You really never get burned out.
Huh?
You just never get burned out. You always have
Yeah, it keeps us from getting burned out. Like there's stuff to do all the time, and for me, I was like, oh, it solves a lot of problems because now I want to be in the studio all the time and enjoy mostly every single part of that. And, you know, kept a little fresher, and I just really enjoy sewing. So it's a different speed. There's a care that I think happens in thread work. It's hard to capture clay. And a lot of that is also just, remembering childhood stuff and mom and stuff like that. So I don't expect people to like really be blown away by that, but it's really important to me in the process. Those small little things.
Do you think that was part of like, I love that idea of bouncing between stuff so you don't get burnt out, because I get so burnt out on carving 20 hours every other day. Maybe that's why I subconsciously, maybe my brain's like, oh, you need to work, you need to do something. But do you think that was an intuitive thing you were looking for to like break up your routine, or do you think it just kind of came?
I was just looking for a foothold somewhere conceptually, and it just all kind of fell together there. And I didn't really start to grasp the importance of that process changing until later, way later, I think. It's like grass goes a race. And one of the most important things I was ever told was somebody in my thesis committee was somebody in grad school or went to grad school, or that still exists. Was like your thesis is not like the finish line, it's the starting line. So you're doing all this work to like get a good jump off the real world. Not like you're exhausted and you're running and you've crossed the line and fall down or whatever. And that helped to restructure how I thought about it. We're not meant to live this way. We're not meant to like maximize our time. We're not meant to like do the same thing for 8 hours a day. We're not meant to. And those rebellions are either physical or mental or societal, right? And then not get too whatever topical. Is this thing loaded? I'm trying to stay away from those jokes. It's just like we're not meant to do it, right? And there's a book called by Yuval Harari called *Sapien*. Heard that book? Amazing book, right? And he makes the argument. I like these like history books, like 1400, 1491. That's my the world's like drastically different than we, at least I, had envisioned it. Like going through school and take histories and you watch these movies or whatever, you kind of think you've got an idea of what the world was like, and it's really not, right? Like when earthworms were running through America, right, for the Columbian Exchange, like just that one ship coming over changed so much, right? Just plant life and these things you don't really think about. And in the *Sapiens* book, he talks about the idea that we didn't domesticate wheat, we domesticated us, right? We gave up a life, humans, we gave up a life of nomadic wandering and being in tune with cycles, for staying in one place to work a crop, right? That's actually not very good for you. It's not great. Like it's the pork value's not great. It's not great, right? So in a way, like the things that, like the environmental thing that we had developed to survive got their hooks in us really hard, right? And then we changed how we lived to farm wheat, right? Because it was stable and you make bread and whatever. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that don't agree with, like, wheat doesn't agree with you, right? You have to be omnipotent to know that, right? But I think it's a really interesting thing to think about it. Like, we're not always completely in control of that, and there's like these three major revolutions that happened. There's the cognitive revolution, the agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution, and now we're in the middle of information revolution, tech revolution, whatever you want to call that. And it changes, like, it builds on itself and it has these like booms and stuff. And your brain is the most calorically heavy organ in your body, right? It uses more calories than anything else per square inch. So once we figured out how to cook food, cooking food releases the caloric value much better, right? So thing that kind of lap on top of each other, and then you put them in like almost in completely different species, right? And then you go to agricultural evolution, we change big fundamental things on how we work, right? And it feels like we're in the middle of that right now.
Yeah, which is why I think pottery, ceramics, like, is more important now than ever. Obviously, it's important at all times, but especially right now with all the technology, like you said. I'm about to open a pottery studio, and I've had so many fears, like, who's gonna come, who's gonna do, who wants to be here? And it's like, well, now more than ever, people are looking to do things with their hands, because it's not a dying art, but my goodness, it's just not as needed or needed more now than they do ever.
It's AI proof
Yeah, right.
for now.
For now, yeah. Oh, God.
But it feels weird to like, I haven't posted in like a while, It feels weird to like, hey, look at my stuff. And like, there's a genocide happening. And just like the world's on fire right now. It's really weird to like, isn't this cool? Don't remember to follow and like, right? And like, your house is on fire behind you.
Yeah.
It just, I don't know how to negotiate it right now. It feels really, really weird.
Yeah, I think.
But I do think like that what you say is right, like we need something tactile.
Yeah.
We need something process oriented to like hold on to and like find meaning in yourself. And I think at least for academia, at least my little small window I'm looking through, I don't know a whole lot, but it seems like the world is changing so much and galleries are shutting down and it's more about the dance you can do on the thing, like not the work you make.
Right.
And like learning about play is almost more like a therapeutic thing when you're finding yourself, you're finding your limits, you're finding your purpose within this thing, and the piece is secondary, right? Like it doesn't matter if it's an amazing thing, it's the time that you kind of hone your own chisel,
It made me think a minute ago when you were talking about what was it? I was going to say something about traveling. Oh yeah, so like how the correlation between needing a break at one point too. Sorry, I just had one question. I'll wrap up in a second. But the correlation between, needing a break between work, finding like other mediums to kind of give yourself that break too. I feel like whenever I realized that I was burnt out so much on carving every day, is whenever I started teaching and then I started traveling. And that gave me not only a break emotionally from doing this over and over again, but also a break from the income and the stress of selling pieces to make a living. And so having that switch up to was like such a freeing feeling to just be out of that space.
It's tough. When I was a potter, you were never off. Yeah. It's Sunday at 11 o'clock and you're thinking like, how do I make bread? How do I make bread? I hope it doesn't rain. Like, it's like you're never, for me at least, I never got a break. I'm sorry.
Well, thank you. I was curious, Richard, how you decide who these figures are. You started speaking a little bit to it earlier on, and I see the profile specifically, and it's reminding me of some like really rough Rembrandt sketches of like these just really rough hewn people that I feel like are not, I don't know, I don't see that person walking on the street. So I'm curious if you have this person in mind, or you sort of alluded to letting the piece tell you who the figure is, but I wonder if you could talk to that process a little bit.
The worst thing to ever hear in the studio is to come in and say, oh, that looks like Sylvester Stallone, or whatever, like, or some actor, I don't know, or something, oh, God. Because it's really hard to navigate and not make like nobody, but also be specific, right? So, I'm trying not to think about what I'm doing too much. I'm pushing and pulling and adding and tweaking or whatever, and I'm not